Good. Anyway, I hope you remember the trajectory of formation of global economy. The first phase was a medieval European economy, mean two poles, a northern pole, low country, outskirts of the low country mean Baltic Sea and the southern part of the British Isles. And the southern pole, northern part of the Italian peninsula. And between these poles, organized a meeting point, a Champagne Breeze Fairs organization. This was the first. And a great rupture, the great break in the history of European economy was the great crisis of the 14th century, the Great Plague. 1/3 of European population disappeared in consequence of high mortality rate of epidemics, and started the formation, the early modern form of European economy under direction of Venice. Venice was the first leading city. The second one, Antwerp. The third one, Genoa. And we arrived the first real global leading city, Amsterdam. Last lecture, 2 weeks ago, I spoke about the formation of Low Country. Low Country and the Netherlands was a part of Low Country. This is the Habsburg Empire. On the time of Middle Ages and generally the traditional time, one empire, not necessarily to be one unit. If we are looking at formation of Habsburg Empire, the main part was the Iberian Peninsula, but scattered everywhere, southern and the northern part of Europe. For example, Kingdom of Naples and Sicily, and this area of Low Country and the Burgundy. Therefore, this was the Habsburg Empire, focused to Iberian Peninsula. One of the richest part was Low Country. Low Country, a core area since the Middle Ages. But in the Low Country lived a different population. Lived the French people, it's named recently on the southern part of Belgium, Wallon population. Lived the Flemish people and the Dutch people. It's connected more closely to the German language. And this area, Low Country, became one core area of counter-reformation and counter-reformation. You know the story of Reformation and counter-reformation. Everybody know which is the process? It's quite special in the history of Christendom, because time by time discuss the most important principles of Roman Catholic Church. For example, one famous Czech people, Jan Hus, discussed and killed him in the 14th century. Later, Luther in the southern part of the Germany, and later Jean Calvin, a French reformer, discussed this question. And each of Reformed Church realized they are the main way of Christendom. Therefore, nobody knew that somehow this is the other branches. Each reformist agreed that we are the main way, the highway of Catholicism. And later, introduced a lot of innovation. For example, a little bit Reformed churches turned back to the Old Testament. In the last week, 2 weeks ago, I spoke about. For example, connection to the poverty. I spoke about the poverty. No? Yes. Because the classical Roman Catholic concept about the poverty, that the poverty is the condition of the health, intellectual and the mental healthness. You know the story from the New Testament that easier walking to the camel on the needle than the rich people going into the heaven. Therefore, according to classical concept of the Christendom, if somebody would like to go to heaven, it's not a good way to be a rich people. But very interesting how changed this concept by Reformed Church, like for example the Protestant, Calvinist church, Calvinist religion, turned back to the Old Testament. I spoke about. No? Okay, you remember this story that to be a poor people, according to this Reformed Church concept, this is some kind of the sin. If somebody don't want to work, and very interesting, recently there are two concepts concerning the poverty. This is the classical Roman Catholic concept that necessary to help a poor people, and other one necessary to take under pressure and pushing to the direction of work and solving the problem of the poverty. Okay, this is the core area of the Reformed Church. And Philip II was the emperor of Rome, of Habsburg Empire, and would like to increase the rate of taxes. It's a key problem. Each of, look at, for example, great independence war of America, and later United States, which was the key element of the independence war. English crown increased the rate of taxes. Therefore, the contemporaries very sensible for the fees and the taxes. Philip II increased the rate of taxes. Therefore, the local people organized some upheaval against the rating and the rising of the taxes, organized by Philip II, and started an long independence war for the independence of the Netherlands. It's named 80 Years War, started in 1568 and closed only in the middle of 17th century. It's a very, very long independence war. And number of provinces, 17 in the Low Countries. 17 provinces were in the Low Countries. And from 17 provinces became finally independent only the 7, the northern section of the Low Countries. Look at the story of the starting accident of independence war. Time by time, try to solve the problem, the conflict between the crown and between the local people in the Low Country, and send it, for example, a lot of governor, and they discussed and negotiated the leader of local people, and finally expired the patience of the crown. Therefore, sent a soldier, Don Fernando Alvarez de Toledo, and short name of him, Duke of Alba. On the cemetery of family of Duke of Alba, there is a short sentence on the tomb of Duke Alba: never lost battle, never. Look at the face, very cruel and very harsh people, very harsh people. Philip II, Emperor of Holy Roman Empire, sent a Duke of Alba discuss with the leader of local nobility, Count Egmont and Count Horn. Very special pronunciation. Look at different date of birth, but the same date of death. Not by chance. Because negotiation with Duke of Alba was very short. And leader of the opposition killed. Not only these two leaders, but more thousand noblemen of Low Country. Therefore, created a very special situation, very special social structure. It's named a truncated society. Because if we would like to describe the structure traditional society we can describe with help of triangle or pyramid. On the top there is a king or emperor, highest part, generally 1%, a nobility, 10% are citizens, and the majority are peasantry. This is the normal structure of traditional society. Truncated society means in this situation, cancel the nobility. Almost all of the nobility of Low Country, it's massacred. And which was the reaction? This critical situation, two options for the local people. The first one, capitulation. The second one, continue the opposition. In the case of Low Country, the second option selected, and leader of the opposition and the long independence war was the regent class. Regent class mean rich bourgeoisie, rich citizens, mainly of Amsterdam, rich people. How rich? It's very, very rich. It's possible, I mentioned 2 weeks ago, that whole of Europe, 12,000 great merchant vessels sail on the sea, Northern Sea and generally Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Whole of European fleet, 12,000 merchant vessels, and 6,000 sail under Dutch flag. Therefore, it's very, very rich people were. And very important, in this period, in the 17th century, it means the golden age of Dutch Republic, appeared a portrait. Why? Because in Calvinism, like in the Jews' heritage, prohibited painting on the wall of churches. Prohibited. Therefore, a painter would like to find other subject for the paintings and proliferated portraits about the rich people, rich citizens of the Golden Age. And very interesting, very famous paintings of the Night Watch, painted by Rembrandt, yeah. And if somebody would like to see, you can find in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Why so interesting? Because recently we are thinking about the painter and any other people and making a sculpture and painting and buildings as an artist. But very important to mention, in this period, in the early modern time mean 16th, 17th and 18th century, these people, like Rembrandt, no more only artisan. When painted, for example, the famous Night Watch, take a list of price, make a list of price on the wall of Civil Guard of Amsterdam. And the first category, pay whole of the body. 1,000 gulden. The second one, only half of body, 500 gulden, and only the profile, only, for example, 50 gulden. Why so interesting? Because we can calculate how many people paid for the painting. Because on that time it's no art making a paintings. This is a profession, an artisan, the painter were. Okay, but the rich people of Amsterdam were able to pay a huge amount. Therefore, the painter and the sculptor live very high level of living standards. Okay, look at the problem. Look at the problem of capitalism. Because the first capitalist state was the Netherlands. And at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, it's possible, I spoke about yet former time, in European social sciences discussed, it was a great debate, about the origin of capitalism. Why so problematical? Because if we are looking at the traditional European society, who is the highest class? A nobility. Which is the ethical frame of nobility? The braveness, the prestige, and the military skills. No connection with value of capitalism. Why? Because which is the most important value of capitalism? Rational thinking, rational decision, and it's making a profit, making a benefit. No connection with the traditional ethical values. Braveness, military skills, killing the people, and so and so. Therefore, discussed about this problem, which is the origin, because if we are looking in the first point of view, no connection to European thinking. Before the National Socialism, it's no political connection, it was a scientific debate. Werner Sombart, very famous historian, urban historian, and was the representative of one opinion, and Maximilian Karl Emil Weber, short name Max Weber, represented the other opinion. Look at the first one. Werner Sombart argued that a spirit of capitalism introduced minorities, Armenian, Jews, and Muslims. Why? Because these minorities, according to arguments of Sombart, no connected to the medieval ethical criteria, no any connection. Therefore, introduced, it's very not good example, but like a virus, introduced somehow the spirit of capitalism. And the virus became very viable and transformed whole of European mentality. Okay, this was one opinion. No political, on historical argument. But later, ideologists of Nazism used this kind of arguments. The second one, Max Weber argued that no, capitalism appeared like accident which made a truncated society, because the ethical values defined for the society in normal situation, the nobility. But in the case of Netherlands, cancelled, disappeared the nobility, and stepped to the position of nobility, the bourgeoisie, the citizens. Therefore, a value of citizens became a model whole of the society. Therefore, it was accidental transformation of society. Therefore, in his famous essay, Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, defined that formation of capitalism started from the Netherlands, and not by chance, after the glorious revolution of United Kingdom, not United, but United, no, British Empire, England, short version, started not by chance with one Dutch king, a Dutch king. And not by chance, the Bank of England, which was a key actor of formation of British capitalism, the stock of money took by Dutch bankers, which traveled to England with William of, how the name is, William of Oranje. It's a Dutch prince, one survival family of the Dutch mobility. Okay, finally, capitalism came from and formed the first 1.1 version in the Netherlands. Look at the history of Dutch Revolution. Generally, the infantry and the continental army of the Dutch Republic is very weak, therefore fortified whole of the area, whole of the country, which was the function of the fortification. On the time of cannons and the artillery, no chance for saving a fort, no chance, but increased the expense. Increase the expense of warfare and slow down the military operation. On the same period, there are Hungarian students, right? Okay, for the question for the Hungarians, a Turkish student? No Turkish student. Because early modern time was a Turkish war period in the history of Hungary. Half of Hungary occupied by Ottoman Empire. And 1.5 century was 207 siege of forts in Hungary. My question for everybody finally, how many successful defense performed by Hungarian soldiers? 207 siege. How many successful? You have to tell one number. Cheers. For Hungarians, you know better Hungarian history, I suppose. How many? One? Very pessimist. Five. It was accidental. If successful defense was accidental. Why? Because the function of the dense network of the forts, no saving the forts, but increase the expense of military operation and slowing down of military operation, no more. Therefore, if we are looking, for example, Low Country, a lot of forts function, expired, burning the money of the Spanish army and slowing down a military operation. This is the continental military operation, but looking a great, huge Dutch fleet on the battle on the sea, won by the Dutch fleet each of battle. Okay, some independence war, battle of the Gibraltar, and the siege of Hast. Why no possible to saving forts? Because on the time of artillery destroyed whole of the wall. Therefore, the forts, if had enough time for destroying the walls, no chance for defense, for saving. Okay, which was the most important weapon of the trading republic? I hope you remember the story. You remember the story of the early European Northern economical pole. I hope you remember, this is the Low Country, and other one, a Baltic area. Why so important the Baltic area? I hope you remember. This is the source area of wooden material, timber, which was the most important raw material whole of the traditional time, like recently the fossil fuels. If somebody had a timber, had everything, raw material for building, construction, bridge and ships and fire and for everything. And the Baltic area, and moreover the tar, which used for covering the body of the ships and insulated of the body of the ships. Therefore, it's very important that Low Country monopolized the trade with the Baltic Sea. Timber material, grain, mainly wheat and rye, and tar. This was the key products. Why so important? Because making the largest fleet, whole of Europe, no possible without monopolizing the Baltic raw material. Started even in the 15th century. Later, the Emperor Charles V, who was born in Low Country, obtained the King Denmark free passage for Flemish vessels through the Sound, Øresund. To the 60s of the 16th century, the Dutch trader monopolized 70 or 80% of Baltic trade, which performed by 800 ships per year. And finally, to the end of, on the end of 16th century, the Flemish trader carried the majority of the good exchange between Iberian Peninsula and North Atlantic. Grain, naval stores and industrial products exported from Low Country to Baltic area and backward south, grain naval stores came from the Baltic Sea, and salt, oil, wool and wine, above all silver, back to the Baltic area. Therefore, if possible, I mentioned some weeks ago that the playground of global trade for European trader was the trade between Low Country and the Baltic Sea. Good. Why so important for the Dutch rebels monopolizing the trade of Baltic Sea? Because Spanish kingdom on that time was in the crisis. Why? Because Spanish area reconquered from the Muslim state, but never unified. Why? Look at, for example, recently the structure of the Spain, former time I spoke about. The core area, Castile, which is the capital of Castile, Madrid. But beside Castile, there were and there are important minorities. Look at Catalonia, which is the capital of Catalonia, Barcelona. Look at the Basque area, other minority. Bilbao, Andalusia, a lot of minorities. No unified Spain. Therefore, which is the most important material of unification? A Catholicism. A fearful Catholicism. But for fearful Catholicism, necessary to find enemies. Who were the most important enemies? In the first generation of enemies, a Jewish people. Therefore, after the unification of Spain and pushing out the Muslim state and the Muslim soldier from Iberian Peninsula, find the new enemies, Jews, expel the Jews. How emigrated, in which country emigrated the Jews? The first wave of emigration to the northern part of Africa. Why? Because in the Muslim countries, invited, and hospitality is excellent for the Jews. Why? Because the Jews, like an immigrant or emigrant, brought with themselves the most important value of immigrant: knowledges and the capitals. Knowledges and capitals. Other wave of emigrant or immigrant who escaped from Iberian Peninsula escaped to Amsterdam. Amsterdam, even though one of the most important core area of publishing of Bible, Old Testament and even the New Testament. It's a printing core area, printing center. And why so important, the Jewish people? First, knowledges trading and merchant knowledges and the capital. Second one, the most important translator of the early modern time were Jews. Translator of the Pope, translator of the Sultan of in Istanbul, Ottoman Empire, translator of Philip II were Jewish people. Why? Because Jewish people lived in diaspora, in different parts of the world. One family connected to Madrid, other part of family lived in Istanbul, the third branch is in Tunis. Therefore, a young Jewish people traveled during the childhood a different country and spontaneously learned 4 or 5 languages. Therefore, Jews, a very useful people, very useful citizens were on the time of early modern time. Okay, the first one, the Jews. Which was the Jews expelled? Which was the second enemies after the Jews? A Moriscos. Somebody know which is the Moriscos? Morisco? No? It's a Muslim people who converted to Christian. But nobody accepted. Therefore, expelled. Majority, because the Jews were citizens and the trader. But the Muslims, peasants, were on the time and applied a very sophisticated irrigation-based agriculture. Very high efficiency. Expelled the Morisco people to northern part of Africa, and on the part of irrigated agriculture introduced animal husbandry. Which is the consequence? Irrigation-based agriculture, for example, able to feed 10 people, and the animal husbandry only 1. Much lower the carrying capacity. Therefore, in consequence of finding of enemies, public enemies, scapegoating somehow, decrease the trading and the agrarian carrying capacity of the country. Therefore, the unified Spain slowed down decade by decade into the crisis. Okay, in this situation started the independence war, and in consequence of the great carrying capacity problem, Iberian Peninsula was able to feed only with help of imported grain from the Baltic Sea. Look, I hope you can follow the situation. There is Spain and the Netherlands. There is a war for 80 years between Spain and the Netherlands. But Spain not able to survive year by year without import of Baltic grain. But the Dutch people who commercialized a Baltic trade, and the grain and the wheat and the rye similarly. For the imported grain, imported cereal, necessary to pay by Spanish king. Therefore, the Spanish king, Philip II, financed the independence war against himself. Unbelievable, unbelievable. It's a good example, making the war against the leader of commercial world, not possible to perform by success. If somebody take into the hand our most important keys of international trade, invincible, invincible. Look at the situation. The Dutch people financed the war against Spain from the money which paid by Spanish king. Unbelievable, contradictory situation. Time by time, Philip II would like to solve this problem. Therefore, for example, 1595, Philip II on the Spanish ports seized 400 Dutch vessels. It's temporarily solved the problem, not necessary to pay, seized. But the following years, 96, no Dutch vessels arrived to Spanish harbors. Therefore, the country started a famine and a scarcity. Therefore, no solution. If somebody take into the hand the keys of trade, invincible. Good. Amsterdam appearance and the emergence of Amsterdam played an important role in Spanish military campaign. Why? Because the Netherlands located on the northern part of Low Country, and the Spanish army occupied and destroyed southern part of Low Country. Rivals of Amsterdam, which is the most important rivals of Amsterdam, was Antwerp. You remember one period on the first half of 16th century, whole of the forming global economy directed from Antwerp. The Spanish army destroyed, and the majority of rich citizens of Antwerp moved to Amsterdam. Not only disappeared the rivals, but the fortune of bourgeoisie of Antwerp fortified to Amsterdam. This is a map about a cereal trade. This is the most important. This is the Baltic Sea, connecting large cereal area, which exported by Dutch vessels, even to Iberian Peninsula. Not by chance, if we are looking at silver which imported from the New World, from Americas, how distributed in Europe. And you can see, which I try to demonstrate, the largest amount of American silver moved to the Netherlands. Why? Because necessary to pay for imported cereals. No other way, because without Dutch import of wheat and the rye, whole of the population of Iberian Peninsula falling into the scarcity, famine. Good. Look at the story of Amsterdam, which 1145 emergence of Amsterdam. One of the most important waves of immigration. If possible, I told to you that if we are looking at the problem of migration, the target area of migration, not only recently, but every time, were winner and the homeland of migration loser. This is the evident scheme of migration. The most important waves of migration, we can separate four waves of migration. The first one, Jewish people. But very interesting, Jewish people who immigrated to Amsterdam changed the identity. Somebody visited in Amsterdam yet? Nobody. I suggest to you, it's a very interesting city, a very small city. It's a real global village. 2/3 of traffic based to the bicycle. It's very calm, like a village. Okay, the first wave is Jews of immigrant. Why so important? I spoke about knowledges, trading experience, language knowledges, translating, and a lot of important conditions. The first one on the year of unification of Spain, and very interesting. This is the most important synagogue of Amsterdam, named a Portuguese synagogue. A Portuguese synagogue. It's a falsifying because majority of Jews came from the Spain. But on the time of independence war, arguing for the local people that I am Spanish, I am Spaniard, but not such kind of, I'm not Catholic but Jew, it's very complicated. Therefore, the Jewish immigrant decided, everybody knew that they came from Iberian Peninsula, but beside of Spain there is a small friendly country, Portugal. And we came from there and falsified the identity, avoiding the conflict, the local people, because on the time of independence war, very harsh the limit between the friend and enemy. If somebody, there is a problem, you came from Spain, you are Spaniard, you are enemy, necessary to kill. Therefore, much peaceful solution for this problem, change the identity. We came from Iberian Peninsula, but we are Portuguese. Okay, Jews was the first one. The second one, Antwerp. Antwerp. I spoke about Antwerp was the capital of trade in the first half of the 16th century. Huge fortune moved from Antwerp to Amsterdam, not by chance. The key organization of Dutch international trade, the Dutch East India Company, half of main fortune take by citizen of Antwerp. The third one are Huguenots. Everybody know which is the Huguenots? Huguenots. It's a French Calvinist. A French Calvinist. A French Calvinist is a very special story because the Calvinism came from French area. Jean Calvin, who is the founder of Calvinism, lived in Geneva. Recently, it's western city of Switzerland, but this is the capital of French province. Generally, in France, on the time of 16th century, the Calvinism was a very popular. Approximately 10% of French population converted to Calvinism. Very important that majority of Calvinist people were noblemen, middle and lower nobility, and artisan. It's very, how the name, it's a citizen-like lifestyle represented by Calvinist people. And Louis XIV, the king of Sun, it's very famous king of France, until the ruling years of Louis XIV, the Calvinist communities made the religion freely in France. And Louis XIV cancelled how the name is, independent state of the Calvinist community. Therefore, in the 80s of the 17th century, had to escape by Calvinists from France. And Free Direction launched Huguenots, Calvinist people, with the knowledges, artisan, very large artisan community, and the low and the middle class noblemen. 1/3 moved to England, Protestant country, 1/3 moved to Netherlands, and 1/3 moved to the Protestant Principality of German area. The consequence and the effect of Huguenot emigration I can demonstrate with one example. In Prussia existed a small city, marked. It's not a royal city, a little bit lower, a small moderate city. When arrived the French Huguenots and constructed the church of Huguenots, started the career of this small Prussian city. In consequence of Huguenots immigration, the small Prussian city named Berlin. Transformed not only the economic but the urban history to the immigration of Huguenots. Therefore, immigration and the migration generally is fruitful to the area where target area. And finally, a Germans named Hollandganger, who visiting in Netherlands. Very interesting. I lived for half year with fellowship of Royal Academy of the Netherlands, and very interesting and very strange was for me a relation between Dutch people and the German people. Hate each other. For example, I call your attention, for example, atmosphere of football match between Netherlands and Germany. It's very cruel, spitting each other, it's knee on the face, and very interesting. Why? Because in the case of French and the German political leader had somehow finding a compromise and started to close somehow the long period of 20th century of hostile relation. But in the case of German and the Dutch, no process of finding of peace and the compromise between them. And it was a strange for me, because I came from the eastern part of Europe, that the Dutch people disdained the German. Why? Because for 500 years in Netherlands, the people who clean the street and pick the garbages and so on, the low underclass profession made by Germans. Therefore, the poor people, into the Dutch perspective, the Dutch people disdain them. For compensation, during the first and the second, but the Second World War destroyed almost completely the Dutch cities, and Rotterdam, for example, completely destroyed. Therefore, the relation is very bad between them. But the Germans, from the Dutch perspective, the poor people, but repeatedly arrived to from the northern Dutch, northern German area, the immigrants from Germany to Netherlands, because this was a large market of job. Okay. About the Portuguese Jews, wrote in the 17th century one English pamphleter, the Jews and the other foreigners having opened then all worldwide commerce, to them mean a Dutch. Fernand Brodel, Jews like that then the oil on the water records the form of water but does not dissolve in the water. And the Jews trader felt very sensible manner how changed the force, magnetic force of the trade. Very interesting. When a Dutch Republic declined, moved to London. Follow the change of the power network of international trade. Okay. This is the migration of the direction of migration. For example, Huguenots everywhere, Swiss people, I spoke about yet, for example, moved Western Europe, moved the battlefields of Central Europe, Serbians from the Ottoman Empire, from the direction of Ottoman Empire, moved northward, and the Morisco people emigrated and escaped to the northern part of Africa. Okay, these are the migration sources of Amsterdam. One of the most important migration source of the Amsterdam was Antwerp. This is, you can see this indication. Good. Inside of the domestic servant and the day laborers immigration, you can see from the northern part of the Germany,
the most important way for the servants and the day laborers. It was the Netherlands.
Good. Very, very interesting diversity of creeds in Netherlands. I spoke about in the last lecture about the category of the WASP, which is very similar to the situation of the Dutch Republic. Only the 20% of population Calvinist, but the whole of the political structure took under consideration of the Calvinist rich citizens, like in the WASP on the case of political history of United States I spoke about in the last week, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. In the case of Dutch Republic, it's mean classical Calvinist church, but if you walk on the street of Amsterdam, you can find 25 Roman Catholic Church, Dutch Reform, Scottish Reform, Walian Reform, Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Lutheranian, Remonstrant, Mennonite and Jewish, everywhere. As I mentioned in former time, a tolerant spirit of the city, one of the most important indicator of developed area. If no toleration with different people, different religion, different language, different color of skin, it's no developed area. It's very, very reliable indicator of the not only the status but the direction too. In which direction develop and change a local community. In the case of Netherlands, even now it's very tolerant, very, very tolerant country. United Provinces, it's very interesting political structure because it's very modern area, very modern country according to trade and the form of the trade, but the political institution is very archaical. Two capital has in the Netherlands. If you open a geographical guidebook, you can find two capitals, Amsterdam or Hague. The political institution, it's been a parliament and ministry and other institutions located to Hague. Like, for example, in the case of the United States, Washington. It's a political background only for working of governmental job, governmental task, and no any other. Only one function has a political function. Amsterdam, economic capital, and some part of the political institution located into Amsterdam too. But if you open a geographical guidebook, you can find three options. Capital of Netherlands, Hague. Capital of Netherlands, Amsterdam. Capital of Netherlands, Hague and Amsterdam. Therefore, it's no well-defined, it's a condition and the status of capital. Okay, if you visit to Hague, this is the building of Parliament, and this is the Dam Square in the core area of Amsterdam. This is the core area, downtown of Hague, downtown of Amsterdam, and demonstrate well a difference in the spirit of the city. Very interesting, the construction of the state. It's a republic, no ruler, no monarch. But there is a prime minister. A prime minister named the most famous Grand Pensionary. Johan de Witt was the most powerful prime minister of the history of the Netherlands. Prime minister, each case, a prime minister of Holland. Holland is a province, not whole of the country, one province. Why Prime Minister of Holland received the status of Prime Minister whole of the country? Because the national income, 50%, half of the, you remember 7 provinces formed the Netherlands, but only one province, Holland, produced half of the national income. Therefore, automatically, this is the local custom, Prime Minister of Holland, Province of Holland, Prime Minister, whole of the country. Okay, but there is a monarchical construction inside of republic, a Stadtholder, institution of Stadtholder. Stadtholder means governor, no king, governor, much lower. Not by chance, on the time of Glorious Revolution, Stadtholder of Netherlands called to England, and good option for him because from the governor status step up to the king status. One family from the great massacre of Duke Alba survived, a family of Orange, Oranje, which is the official color. Orange, of course. Not by chance, this is the color of national team's dress of the Netherlands. This is the color of family. And why so important to be a governor? Because on the time of long independence war, necessary to organize military operation of army and the fleet. Therefore, very special and very sensible construction, and very divided the society, half of society on the side of governor, half of society on the side of Republican. If somebody interested for this, and the whole of the country, whole of the force against the Spanish army, but very interesting. And if somebody interesting for this time, there is a famous movie. It's an Admiral. Somebody know? A movie of Admiral 10 years ago, made by Dutch filmmakers. About one of the most famous admiral of Dutch history, Ruyter. Admiral Ruyter. Ruyter. It's very famous people. In Hungary there are the two sculptures of the Ruyter Admiral, because a Hungarian priest close to the prison of Galleys, Protestant priest, and Admiral Ruyter saved them and paid and buy from Galleys this Hungarian Calvinist, mainly Calvinist priest. Therefore, there is a sculpture in Debrecen, in other Hungarian city, and in Budapest. Okay, turn back to the story. It's very divided society, and hate one to other, and demonstrate the movie about life of Admiral Ruyter, who tried to find a compromise between two parties of the country. Okay, a Stadtholder was an admiral of fleet and a general of continental army. Two part of the parliament, Tweede Kamer, as the prime chamber and the second chamber, and peace which declared in the international law the independent status of the Netherlands, which was the Peace of Münster. This was the very complicated organization of the peace treaties, which closed 30 years war in the middle of 17th century. Not interesting, but this is the official declaration that the Netherlands, at the end of long 80 years war, became an independent country. By question, somebody know, two countries appeared on the map of Europe. The first one was the Netherlands. Somebody know which country declared independent status beside the Netherlands? No? Belgium left the part of the Habsburg Empire. No new status. Belgium named a Spanish Low Country on that time because divided and separated from the Netherlands. No? Switzerland. You know, it's a very long story. Switzerland, a very special country. Somebody visited in Switzerland? In Switzerland there are 4 different basic languages. There is Italian, German, French, and Rhaeto-Roman. Rätoromän. It's a new language, new Latin language on the mountain area, very small community. And it's possible, I told to you, when I lived in 1.5 years, I worked in Switzerland, and when I visited in movie, free language subtitle. Very interesting, because there is an English soundtrack and German, French, Italian. I remember first time I watched Pulp Fiction. It's very complicated, listening and translating German, French, English. It's very complicated. First time I realized which was the communication and the taste of the communication. When first I listened Hungarian version, because it's a little bit more complicated, the language of Tarantino, but help a lot, because in different languages I try to find a good form of the puzzle. Why became Switzerland so different language? No, very interesting. When I lived in Bern, in the capital of Switzerland, and it was unbelievable, because each people, each valleys, there is a special local language. It's named a Deutsch. It's not a German, a literature version of the German, local Deutsch. Until the 20th century, no written version, only oral version. And if somebody living in Bern speak a Berner Deutsch, if living in Zurich, speaking a Zürcher Deutsch, no understand each other. Separated. Okay, and going to the kindergarten, elementary school, for them, German, a Hochdeutsch, a High German, a foreign language. Therefore, for Swiss people, the different dimension of social communication connected different language. In the familiar communication, local Deutsch. In the official communication, Hochdeutsch, High German, and any other languages, because of course necessary to learn French and English. Okay, it's very interesting. But why? Because Switzerland was early birth national state. The formation of Switzerland made before the formation of nationalism. Okay, piece of Münster. Which was the most important barrier in front of the great international career of Dutch trader? The largest fleet, half of the merchant vessels sailed under Dutch flag, but no access to the important triangle of international trade. Two triangles, you remember I hope, one direction the Asian trade, other one American trade. Asian trade under control of Portuguese, American trade under control of Spanish people. Therefore, somehow necessary to step into the international trade. Okay, very good strategy. It's good strategy for taking position in new area, finding the weakest rivals, the weakest one. Therefore, it's general suggestion. The result depend good selection of rivals. If you select a weak rivals, high chance for winning. Okay, Portuguese Empire conquered Brazil, conquered some area, coastal area of Africa, coastal area of Indies, Indonesia, and even arrived to Japan. It's possible you know that in the 16th century, a large Christian community converted to Christendom in Japan, under direction of Portuguese missionaries. Okay, and the Portuguese on that time, it's a small country, limited resources, and slowed to crisis. Therefore, for Dutch trader, the weakest rival was the Portuguese. Turned to the direction of Asian trade. Used the classical spying, commercial spying, two spies sent to discover the way to Indian Ocean. It's saved by Portuguese. Jan van Lieshoten and Cornelius Houtman, two Dutch spies, discovered the good way, because it's a secret. This was a secret. You remember the story of Henry the Navigator, Prince of Portugal, who started the first big data revolution, collected elementary information from logbooks about the direction of ocean current, direction of winds, weather condition, and so on and so. Therefore, necessary to solve the secret of the sailing, good sailing direction to Indian Ocean. Jan van Lieshoten and Cornelius Houtman survived this spying war because majority of spies killed because it was a little problem, a little question for the Portuguese. Okay, Cornelius Houtman turned back from the spying work and organized a small fleet, and followed the trajectory of Portuguese ship, turned Africa, the Horn of Good Hope, and two-way followed after the turning of Good Hope. The first one, Channel of Madagascar. Channel of Madagascar, it's good controlled trajectory of Portuguese sailing route. Therefore, Cornelius Houtman decided sail on the open ocean, and this became the highway of Dutch capitalism to Indonesia. And sailed to Indonesia, turned back, and the second travel of Houtman produced 400 profit, 400% profit. It's very high. Look at, for example, take your money into the bank, produce 10 or 15, it's maximal 10 or 15%. One travel produced 400% benefit. Therefore, when turned back, collected a trader interested for this investment and founded the Dutch East India Company. The Dutch name, Verenigde Oost-Indische Company, short version is VOC. Stock of Dutch East India Company, 64 tons of gold, staff which organized the international trading system, 10,000 employees, and 160 vessels participating in the international trade on the board with 8,000 sailors. And the rate of profit changed year by year, whole of the 17th century between 20 and 40%. Why so interesting? Because it was a unique construction. The first important peculiarity of this organization, it's independent. No governmental, it's an independent civil organization. And like Dutch government participated the founding of Dutch East India Company, but only as stockholder. A Dutch East India Company was a country inside the country. It's an independent organization. First. Secondly, this organization was quite unique because any other colonial countries, Russia, France, Dutch, no, not Dutch, English people, Portuguese, and the Spanish organized a state building colonialization. It's mean constructed whole of the colony from the settlement until the cities. Whole of that. It's a state implementation. But very important activity of the Dutch East India Company was a Phoenician model, a Phoenician or spider model. You know the Phoenician. Phoenician, it's a folks of antiquity. Founded Tyros, Babylon, Sidon in the Near East. A Phoenician. A Phoenician model mean not necessary conquering whole of the country. No, only conquering the core area, the core market, and making a spider model. Very moderate number of employees and only checking, controlling, and monopolizing the key products. The key products, silk, spice, and luxury goods generally. No any others. Therefore, enough only 10,000 people. Very moderate the corruption, because everybody, employees of agency, receive salary, and after the colonial service, moving back to the Netherlands. It's a spider model, applied whole of the Asia, and founded a capital in Indonesia on the island of Java. Sorry. Oh, picture. No. Okay. Founded one very well constructed and organized small city in the island of Java, Indonesia. It's named Batavia. It's well constructed like in a typical Dutch city. It's chestnut channels, well constructed buildings with 5,000 Dutch people. Somebody know which is the recent name of Batavia? Jakarta. Not so Jakarta, it's a capital of Indonesia. But the core area founded by Dutch people. Recently it's not so good constructed whole of the country because the outskirts it's very confused construction, but the core area founded by Dutch people. Okay. As I mentioned, the whole of the country controlled and directed by Prime Minister and the governor. Inside of the Dutch Republic, Dutch East India Company was an independent construction with single policy, single direction, and single control of Asian trade. And very efficient. Why? Because Asian trade is a very rich trade. The population of the Asian area, very high density of population, very high intensity of trade. Therefore, the Phoenician model, the spider model, very efficient. Low investment and high profit. And Dutch commercial empire, these are the milestone occupation of Canton, Ceylon, Amboina, Batavia, Formosa, Macau, Japan, and Bantam. And very interesting, one exception had from the Phoenician model. This is the southern part of Africa. In this area, a real estate installation introduced by the German people, and very interesting, the language of the Dutch colonizer. It's named Afrikaans or Boer languages, has saved the grammatical system of the 18th century, before the modernization of language. For example, in Hungarian language, there is a similar 18th century, before the modernization, one minority of Hungarian people living in Romania, and closed from the unit of Hungarian speakers community, and saved the language status of the 18th century. Something different happened in the Boer or Afrikaans population in Dutch area, southern area of Africa. Okay, but Dutch people participated, and the Dutch trader participated not only in the international trade between Europe and Asia, but a local trade. Because, for example, India consumed double of quantity of spice compared with Europe. Some picture about, this is the Batavia. You can see how it's a chess-made construction of the city, and these are the typical intercontinental trading vessels of Dutch East India Company. Okay, other direction of the international trade, Asian trade occupied. Other side of the international trade are American trade. American trade tried to occupy a follow the similar logic. In the case of American trade, the weakest rival was a Portuguese. Portuguese occupied Brazil, occupied the coastal area of Brazil, founded a Dutch West India Company, a little bit later, 2 decades later, and would like to occupy cities on the coastal area. Occupied San Salvador, Bahia, Curaçao, Suriname, but which was the most important problem with the American colony? Low density of population. The Phoenician model, the spider model, on empty world, not able to function. In America, function only the state installation. Therefore, spider and the Phoenician model, which was very successful in America, it's taken into the vehicle in Americas, because Dutch people, not only southern part of Americas, tried to take the headquarters, but tried to conquer in northern part of America too. The first small colony was New Amsterdam. Somebody know which is the recent name, New Amsterdam? New York. Changed from the English colonizer. Only some local names save the heritage of the Dutch people. For example, Haarlem. Haarlem, which is a district of New York, and which is a name of city in the Netherlands. Okay, finally, the effort conquering of America was unsuccessful, and only 2 small coastal colonies were able to take into the hand of Dutch Republic, Curaçao and Suriname. Any other expired, because in the American condition, the spider, the Phoenician model didn't work. And the effort concerning the making a colony in America's closed Peace of Breda and losing New of Amsterdam, which was the barriers of the success of the Netherlands. One of the most important barriers of the success are low number of population. International comparison, United Provinces, only 2 million, compared with England 6 million, or France 17 million, even Sweden, which was the rising power of Baltic trade, comparable. And the
Capital, 200,000. London is 500,000, Paris 500,000, and Stockholm much lower, but London and Paris,
It's very dangerous rivals were in Amsterdam. And finally, the control over the Baltic lands, it didn't function so efficiently, even at the turn of 17th and 18th century. Okay, finally, the golden age of Amsterdam and the Netherlands closed at the turn of 17th and the 18th century, partly because Amsterdam and the Netherlands was somehow a donkey between the city-state and the modern territorial state. And at the 18th century, century of enlightenment, century of formation of nationalism and the national state, rise up a new form of construction, a territorial state, and the most successful territorial state on the 18th century was in London, and behind London, England and the British Empire. Okay, in the next week I will speak about the career and the rising of territorial and the national states. Thanks a lot for your attention.